I'm Doug McKinney. I'm a former chairman of the West Virginia Republican Party. I was asked to MC the program tonight. It's a real honor to do this for Attorney General Morrisey. I want to thank you all for coming. We have a couple of things we'd like to introduce. We have a number of candidates, so we don't have time to introduce all of them. But I do want to introduce the president of the Greenbrier County Republican Club, Gordon Campbell.
Good evening.
And we want to introduce the chairman of the Greenbrier County Republican Executive Committee, Ben Anderson. And we were not planning on introducing candidates, but we do appreciate the fact that one of the candidates for U.S. Senate is with us tonight, Congressman Alex Mooney. Thank you for visiting Greenbrier County. Now, I would like for us to stand, and the chairman of the Republican Club Brent Thompson, is going to give the invitation.
Our minutes. Gracious Lord, thank you for being here tonight. Thank you, and the speakers, and the thank you for the office. This is what Lord, we ask your blessing on the food that we will eat. We thank you for watching over us, keeping us safe. And Lord, we ask for fair and honest elections.
Amen.
And Lord, we ask that you raise up good men and women to lead us. We need you. These things we ask in Christ's name.
Amen. Thank you for that, Brent. I think everybody here would agree that this country needs more prayer than we can send up tonight. Next, the Pledge of Allegiance will be led by Frank Tuckwiller, who's a retired Marine major and recipient of the Silver Star.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You may be seated. At this time, I'd like to introduce a man I've known for some 20 years, and the thing I've been impressed most with him is that he's a workaholic. He's served this state for the last 12 years, and he's served it admirably. He's won cases at the Supreme Court. He has chased down workers' comp deadbeats. He has won cases against the overreach of the EPA and various other government parties. I met him 20 years ago, and I'm proud to have been one of his first contributors in his first election as Attorney General. So it gives me a great deal of pleasure to introduce you tonight to the next governor of West Virginia, Attorney General Patrick Morrisey.
Well, that's a great introduction, and it's wonderful to be back in Greenbrier County again. Now, I'll tell you, I'm really fired up, and for those who have worked with me in the past, you know it takes a little bit for me to get going. I'm going to try to keep my remarks down to about 10 minutes because we've got a great guest of honor who's going to get you really caught up on everything going on across the country. But this has been a very good week. And I couldn't think of a better place to share what's been going on in the great state of West Virginia than with my friends right here in Greenbrier County. Thank you. Let me start out with some big news of the day. Today, one of the liberal news stations came out and said that in my race for governor, we're ahead by 7 points. That's And that's good polling news, but we can't let up. We have 11 days left to go work, to knock on every door, to keep making phone calls, to turn our vote out. This will likely be a low turnout election. Your work makes a difference. Because when we win in Greenbrier County, or Monroe County, or Summers, or Raleigh, we send a message across West Virginia. So I'm so heartened to see wonderful people out here tonight. And I know this is just the beginning of our final 11-day stretch where good things are going to happen. Second big thing this week. Many of you have been following what's going on with the Fourth Circuit in their effort to trample on the integrity of women's sports, right? You guys have been hearing about that. The Fourth Circuit can't seem to recognize that men and women are different. And that they somehow don't think it's appropriate to separate men and women in sports on the basis of biology. Here in West Virginia, we know better. What happened is a couple years ago, the West Virginia legislature passed forward-thinking legislation, and they said that when you're separating out sports teams, it was very reasonable to do so on the basis of biology. So we went into court, and we started to defend that. And I'll tell you, at that district court level, originally that case was enjoined, but we went to work, and we had to submit 3,000 pages of evidence, 500 docket entries. But at the end of the day, the district court judge who originally enjoined the law, he was persuaded by the 3,000 pages. And this is, by the way, no conservative judge. But he understood the basic concept and the differences between men and women. So we won in the district court. Unfortunately, as you've heard just a couple weeks ago, the Fourth Circuit flipped that around, and you had a couple Democrat appointees in a 2-1 decision rule against our law. Well, over the last few weeks, we've been fighting back. First, I announced that we're going to take this integrity of women's sports case all the way up to the U.S. Supreme Court, and we will win. But I'll be honest with you, to me, the biggest news is what's happened the last couple days. Coming on the heels of Riley Gaines coming in to work with me last week, there were 5 brave young women, you may have heard about this, up in Harrison County. And they were very upset that a biological male is going to play shot put against them. And so these little girls, they said, that's not right, it's not fair. And so they decided to protest that and not compete. Well, after that happened, and I think these little girls that came to our event last week, they're so courageous, they're the most wonderful girls, they just want basic fairness. After that happened, there was a response that they were going to not be allowed to participate in sports for the remainder of the period. That was wrong. So the little girls and their parents sued, and then my office stepped in with the brief, and as of yesterday, the little girls can play. Let them play. And it shows you the importance of having people of all stripes stand up and use the power of the First Amendment. Don't let the swamp and the woke left chill your ability to speak and do the right thing. These little girls, they may only be 12, but they stood up for what's right. And I said I would have their back, and I will always have the backs of little girls and our women in the state of West Virginia when I serve as your governor. So big things going on. Then this week, we rolled out a number of endorsements, a lot of close allies to President Trump. And I think more and more West Virginians, they know who the proven conservative is. They know who the America First conservative is in this race. And you know why? Because they've been looking, voters have been looking at my record. And we have a record of getting big things done, conservative things done, that matter for the state of West Virginia and for our country. Remember when Joe Biden and the Green New Deal came calling? There was one person in the state that stepped up and said, no, we're not going to have those coal miner jobs eliminated. We're not going to put natural gas out to pasture. We're going to step up, and we're not going to let the swamp win. So in a famous case called West Virginia v. EPA, we took the Biden administration all the way up to the U.S. Supreme Court, and we won. We took on the swamp and all of the creatures residing in it, the Bloombergs and the Bidens and all the people on the far left, they wanted to go after our jobs. We said no. We've had other big wins as well. Right now we're defending West Virginia's pro-life law, and we've won in the district court, and now we're hopeful we're going to win at the Fourth Circuit as well. We've been actively defending your Second Amendment rights. That's the reason why I'm the only candidate running who's been endorsed by the NRA, by the West Virginia Citizens Defense League, by the Gun Owners of America. The right to bear arms is cherished in West Virginia, and under my watch, they are not going to take your rights away. We led the way to defend the Hope Scholarship because we need to empower our kids and our parents. There needs to be more accountability. That was a big fight against the unions. We stepped up, we fought, and we won. So I think as this race is developing, more and more people know there is one proven conservative with a track record of getting really big things done for the state. Now the second reason I think that people are really receiving our message well is because people know there are very serious threats facing our state and our nation right now. And I mentioned the transgender, the radical agenda that's coming here to West Virginia and how we have to fight back against that. But let me tell you that the woke left has been very busy in Washington, D.C. They're trying to rewrite Title IX to take these radical trans policies everywhere, not just to ensure that men are playing sports with women, but to let men, hulking men, walk into locker rooms and changing rooms and compromising little girls' privacy and safety. Just this week, I joined with many of my colleagues and we sued the Biden administration over their Title IX, and we will win that case as well. People also know that little old West Virginia has been the leader taking out the mandatory electric vehicle policy of the Biden administration. Now, insane is too charitable a word to use about this Biden policy. Because you know what they're trying to do? Think about it. They're trying to force about 68% of Americans into having these electric vehicles by 2032. Now, the average electric vehicle costs about $10,000 more than a normal car. How many West Virginians can afford to do that? I don't know if many of you can. Beyond that, the Biden administration is moving full speed ahead with this policy, even though there's no business model for the charging stations. We don't know how the power's going to work. But even beyond that, they're trying to go after our values by saying we're going to dramatically increase the demand for electricity, right, with all these new EVs, at the very time they're trying to wipe out coal and gas. It's the most idiotic policy you'll ever see. West Virginia and my office is leading the way nationally to push back against this. And once again, we are going to win. So on issue after issue, we've been leading the way to dismantle the administrative state, to take on the woke left. But I think the other reason why people are reacting so well to our campaign is that people know that West Virginia deserves an America First conservative as their governor. And someone who, when President Trump gets elected, isn't just going to be finger to the wind about these policies. We know that my opponents are fingers to the wind, but I'm not. And so when President Trump gets in there and he starts to send power back to the states, we need responsible governors, conservative governors, who will back up President Trump and make sure that our country is operating under the right structure for constitutional governance. That's critical. That's my pledge to you, serving as your next governor. We're going to work closely with our president, and we're going to make sure that West Virginia truly becomes that shining state in the mountains. Now, I see a lot of friends in the room tonight, but it would be remiss of me if I don't point a couple people out. First of all, I want to say thank you, Doug, for your intro tonight. Appreciate it. We have my wife, Denise, here. Where's Denise? And we have Congressman Alex Mooney, a good friend of mine. Let's give him another round of applause. Alex is a good man, and he's a proven conservative, and I want everyone here to know that. So we have a lot going on, a lot of great momentum. But it's all capped off with this wonderful event here to see all of you. And I was so pleased a couple weeks ago when I had the chance to speak with Vivek about a lot of the work that he's doing to put America first. And I was proud of his presidential campaign. I know that, you know what, thank you. Look, I've been a defender of President Trump from day one. I was the first to endorse President Trump in this race. But I'll tell you, when you're running for office, you look for people who bring good ideas to the table. And let me tell you, that is an idea factory right there. Look, and you're going to hear from him in a minute, but he knows the importance of restoring our constitutional system and how everything has gone out of whack. So I'm looking forward to hearing from him. Vivek has great business acumen. He's obviously brilliant. He opened up his own biopharmaceutical company. He understands the importance of job creation and economic growth. And he's been an outspoken advocate for President Trump. One of the things that I think was best about his campaign is that he distinguished himself with his ideas, but he did it the right way. He was supportive of President Trump. He knew what Trump did. And he got young people involved, and he was a champion for conservative values. And then most importantly, I think Vivek has a great vision for the future. That's why it's my distinct honor to be with you tonight. Oh, I see Julia's here, my daughter Julia. Julia, wave. I didn't see you back there. It's my honor to introduce just an incredible leader for our country, Vivek Ramaswamy. Vivek, thanks.
A round of applause for the next governor of West Virginia right here. I love this thing. And I'll tell you why I'm here today. I'll get to this in a moment. But there's something deeper going on in the country right now. I'm here in Utah, Patrick. And the reason you need to be the governor is the same reason that Donald Trump needs to be the next president of the United States. We are in the middle of a war in this country. And I don't say that lightly. It does not give me pleasure to use words like this. War is one of these things that speaks itself into existence. But you can't win a war unless you see that you're in war. It is not a war between black and white, as the media would have you believe, or between man and woman, or gay and straight. It's not even really between Democrat and Republican even. Not really. It's deeper than that. It is a war in this country between those of us who love the United States of America and our founding ideals, and a fringe minority who hates this country and what we stand for. And there is no middle ground. I mean, think about why do I call this a war? There's no middle ground between do you believe in merit or do you believe in group quotas? You can't have both. Right? Do you believe in free speech or do you believe in censorship? You cannot have both. Do you believe in American exceptionalism? Or do you believe in apologizing for who we are and for our nation's history? You cannot have both. And right now, more than ever, we need a commander-in-chief who will lead us at long last to victory in this war. And that man will be Donald J. Trump, the 47th President of the United States of America. But he's not going to do it alone. It's not just going to be some president coming from on high from a White House to save us. In the civic realm of our life, it doesn't work that way. If we're going to be saved, it is going to be because we save ourselves. Because every one of us plays our part in saving this country. And that's what Patrick Morrisey is doing by standing up to be West Virginia's next governor as well. That's why it's going to take us state leaders want this land to do this way. I think we as Republicans, I'm going to be, one of the things I, for better or worse, distinguished myself for in the presidential race was speaking some hard truths, not just to the other side, but to our own side as well. And I'm going to speak a hard truth today. I think that we as a Republican Party, we have actually grown lazy. And I don't just mean lazy in the get out the vote operation sense of lazy. And there's that too. You don't like early voting, too bad. You're going to have to do it. If you want to actually win, you got to be able to win to change the rules. But I don't just mean that sense of lazy. I mean lazy in a deeper sense of defining who we even are and what we actually stand for. See, the left is, say what you will about them, they're very good at this. They'll give you a vision. It's not the right vision, but they'll give you something. Race, gender, sexuality, climate. And we're sitting here like we have an addiction problem. They make it too easy for us to just criticize their vision. Right? That's what we've grown accustomed to doing. We'll criticize that vision without offering an alternative vision of our own. What do we actually stand for as conservatives? I think we stand for sovereignty. That's what it means to be an American conservative today. We are sovereign at the level of the individual. You're not just riding some tectonic plate of group identity. You're not just a blob of genetics. You are an individual with free will, able to achieve whatever you want with your God-given potential. We are sovereign at the level of the family, the nuclear family being the greatest form of governance known to mankind, and that we don't apologize for that. We're sovereign as a nation. We are all citizens of this nation, the United States of America, not some nebulous global citizen fighting climate change somewhere, but a citizen of this nation, the greatest nation known to man. And yes, we are one nation under God, sovereign under God. That's not a four-letter word. That's something we can be proud of as Americans. See, individual, family, nation, and God beat race, gender, sexuality, and climate if we have the courage to stand for something. And that's why we require conservatives today, not just with common sense. We talk about that a lot. We've lost common sense in America. But actually, I'll teach you something that I've learned over the campaign. It was eye-opening for me. We Americans, we actually have plenty of common sense. We're not as divided as the media would teach you to believe. 80% of people in this country believe everything I've just told you. And half the 20% on the other side are people younger than me who never learned those ideals in the first place. We can bring them along too. It's not that we lack common sense. Most people in this country, black or white, Democrat or Republican, inner city or rural, will agree with us here that there are two genders, man and woman. They will agree with us that fossil fuels are a requirement for human prosperity, including coal, which also should not be a four-letter word. They will agree with us that reverse racism is racism. Right? That an open border is not a border. It's not controversial because it's false, it's controversial because it's true. They agree with us, most people, black, white, Hispanic, doesn't matter, that the nuclear family is inherently good, it's not a bad word, that parents should be responsible for and able to choose the education of their children, that capitalism isn't a dirty word, it's what lifts us up from poverty, that there's 3 branches of government in the United States, not 4, that we want the elected leaders actually running the government instead of the unelected bureaucrats, that the Constitution has formed the backbone of guaranteeing freedom in this country like it never has in human history. Most Americans agree with us on these things. It's actually not that we lack common sense. Even on self-proclaimed Democrats, they don't lack common sense. What we lack in this country right now is courage. Actually, right. Courage to speak your mind, courage to stand for your convictions, not just when it's easy, but when it's hard. And what I see in this country is actually the other side of this war that I'm talking about. It's not 50% of this country. It's 10%. It's a tyranny, not of the majority. It's a tyranny of the fringe minority that governs in this country today. But if we want to win this war, the way we're going to do it is every one of us as patriots, as people who love this country, actually showing courage, taking risk for our country. That's why I've endorsed this man. He led the way on the most important Supreme Court case of our entire lifetime. That was West Virginia versus EPA. What he allowed us to understand and discover in this country, think about a second Trump term, actually draining the swamp this time around, actually gutting those government agencies, actually firing those federal bureaucrats. You'll hear on TV about the largest mass deportation in American history, and we're going to need that. Take the 10 million plus illegals in this country and return them to the country. We're going to need that. But there's actually a second mass deportation that we need and that can now come to, is the mass deportation of 3 million federal bureaucrats out of Washington, D.C. And the reason we're going to be able to do it, along with deporting their unconstitutional regulations along with them, is because of the work that Patrick Morrisey led right from this state in West Virginia. He lost in early phases. There were lower courts that said, oh, laugh that theory off, until we went to that Supreme Court that President Trump gave us. I give him credit for that. But I give credit to this man for using that Supreme Court to now weave it into judicial precedent in this country to say, once again, in the United States of America, the people we elect to run the government will be the ones who actually run the government, not the unelected bureaucrats in the deep state. That was Patrick Morrisey, folks. And you don't know this, but I actually talked about you on the campaign trail when I was running around this country. The number one thing I wanted to do in my presidential campaign was to go in and gut that deep state. Fire millions of federal bureaucrats, rescind the unconstitutional federal regulations, put in term limits for the bureaucracy instead of these civil service protections. You go down the list, FBI, ATF, CDC, U.S. Department of Education. Start shutting some of these things down, actually. Return that money to taxpayers and parents across this country. That's what we need to do. But if we're able to do it in a second Trump term, and I believe we will be able to, it is going to be because of the foundation laid by the man who's going to be your next governor. And so I was talking to some media outside, and they asked me a question, well, but, is that your sole basis for endorsing him, that he won this important case? Well, the first thing I would say is, that's no small feat. It's the most important Supreme Court case in American history, certainly in our lifetime, in modern American history, was West Virginia versus EPA. But that wasn't quite it. It's that it took risk to do it. See, I know a lot of Republicans who agree with the outcome of that decision, but who would have never taken the personal political risk to actually fight it. They don't want the egg on their face. They don't want those losses in the lower district courts. He didn't know he was actually going to be able to make it to the Supreme Court and win, but he did it anyway. He fought not because it was the most convenient thing for him, but because it was the right thing for our country. And that's what we actually need, especially in positions of executive leadership. Like Congress, Senate, these are important positions, but when it comes to the governorship, a guy who's making executive decisions day after day, you want somebody who thinks of public service not as self-service, but as service to the public. And the fact that that's a novel idea anymore in this country tells you how far we've fallen. It's disgusting. And so when I see somebody who has taken a risk he didn't have to take, but he took it anyway, it's great that it had a good outcome. Even if it didn't, I would still be here anyway because it shows the character of a man who is willing to fight for you, not just when it's easy, but when it's hard. Who is willing to speak the truth for you, not just when it's easy, but when it's hard. And when we talk about winning this war in this country, that's what we are going to require because we live in a 1776 moment right now. I don't say that lightly. Think about our founding fathers and the sacrifice they made in 1776. We praise them often, but we don't actually ask what became of them. There's 56 men who signed the Declaration of Independence. What happened to them? Many of them did. She said it right. What's your name? Tim. Many of them died in bankruptcy because they had their private property seized. They were what people my age would call privileged. It's the word of the day. They were privileged. They were landowners. They were entrepreneurs, successful merchants, lawyers, people with distinguished careers. They took the risk anyway. 5 of them were captured by the British and tortured until their deaths. 12 of them had their homes ransacked and burned to the ground. Look at what they're doing to President Trump and his private property today. Well, that's what they did back in 1776. 9 of them died in the Revolutionary War. 2 more of them had their kids die in the Revolutionary War. They made those sacrifices. They didn't make it for them. They made it for us. They made it so that we could be here 250 years later and say we live in the greatest country known to the history of mankind that has secured freedoms for 250 years in, and that we would be able to fight for it so we have another 250 years and then some still left. And I want each of you to think about this today, because I'm going to make an ask of every one of you. You got, 10, 11 days till this election, and I'm going to ask something of each of you between now and then. But think about this. If you're facing our founding fathers in the afterlife, and they ask you, Thomas Jefferson, George Washington, Alexander Hamilton, John Jay, they ask you, what sacrifice did you make for your country? We better have a darn good answer for them, because this is the country they gave us, a country greater than the one they had. And we owe it to our children. I'm a father of 2 sons. I'm doing this because I'm a father. If I didn't have my 2 sons, there's no way I would have left my comfortable world of business to be doing what I'm doing now. But I'm doing this because we owe it to our children and our grandchildren to pass on to them not the same country we grew up in, but a country greater than the one that we grew up in. That is going to require sacrifice. I think I speak for everybody in this room when I say the inheritance we want to give our kids. One of your kids is here. The inheritance we want to give our kids isn't just a bunch of green pieces of paper. It is a country greater than the one we grew up in, and that will require sacrifice. So that's what I'm going to ask of you in the next 10, 11 days between now and this Republican primary. Look, we're all here because we're Republicans, we're not Democrats, but we're not just here because we're Republicans. We're here because we love this country. And I don't care if you just put a little R after your name. Do you actually have the courage, the spine, the conviction to stand for our national values when it counts? This is one of the rare people who, if he's serving as a governor, will not just serve as a good governor of this state. I'm here selfishly because he's going to serve as a good governor and a good example for people in my home state of Ohio next door, and frankly, to governors across this country of what's possible in the United States. And so you know what? For those of you who have lived the American dream, like I have, my parents came to this country with no money 40 years ago. In a single generation, I've founded multiple multi-billion-dollar companies. I did it while marrying my wife, Apurva, who is a throat surgeon, fights for saving lives every day. The reason she's not with me today is she's in the operating room helping patients, cancer survivors at Ohio State's Cancer Hospital. That's the American dream. But for those of you who have lived the American dream in the way we have, make that sacrifice. Turns out that these races are won at the very end. If you're able to support this man financially, do it. If you're not in a position to do that, there's many ways still to make a sacrifice. You got to look at, we're living in tough economic times, and you know what? Your first duty is to your family. And so if you can't do it that way, fine. Make a donation of your time. Make a donation of the risk you're willing to take. To call people across the rest of the state, to actually invest the time to put a good man in office to lead a good state. When you're the only person in a room who believes what you do. Maybe it's a parent-teacher conference. Maybe it's a school board meeting. Maybe it's a corporate board meeting. Right now you have an obligation to say it. Speak the truth. Say it with conviction. Say it with respect. But part of respect is that you respect your neighbor enough to tell him what you actually think. Not some rope-wash. That's what I'm asking. That's what our founding fathers would ask of you if they were here today. Take a risk for your country. Go home tonight. Look yourself in the mirror. Every one of us has our own unique God-given gifts. They're not the same. Right? Everybody's not born with the same gifts. That's true diversity. It's not the shades of melanin. Every one of us has different gifts that God has given us. And the question is, how do we use those gifts to do what is right in the short time that we are given? To save this country. Before my kids are in high school, if we don't get this right, we don't have a country left. In 1776, they had 7 years to win the American Revolution. It was 7 years and then some. If it had been 8 or 9, we wouldn't have a country. That's the time we're working with right now. If we don't get this right by the time this man is out of his first or second term as governor, I don't think we have a country left. And so I am asking you not just to be here and show your support for this man. You've done that by showing up. I'm asking you to go further, to actually make a real sacrifice of either your time, your voice, or your treasure. Our founding fathers pledged their lives, their sacred honor, and their treasure, and they kept their pledge. I'm asking you to make a pledge and keep it too, to make sure every one of us does our part. And if you all do your part, I promise you, Donald Trump will do his, Patrick Morrisey will do his, every one of you is going to do yours. And if you do, we don't have to be this nation in decline anymore. We don't have to be at the end of the ancient Roman Empire, as we're taught to believe anymore. But we can still be a nation that is in its ascent. Maybe even the early stages of our ascent, actually. Maybe we're not even at base camp, on our way still to that shining city on the hill. That country where we can look our kids in the eye and mean it, actually. When we tell them you still get ahead of the United States of America based on your own hard work, your own commitment, your own dedication, and that you know what, you are free to speak your mind at every step of the way. That is the American dream. That is what we are running to. And with your help in the next 10, 11 days here in West Virginia, that is what we will revive to save our great nation. Thank you for having me, guys. God bless you and your families. And God bless our United States of America. Do not stop fighting for this nation. It is worth fighting for. Thank you.
Hey guys, I want to let you know we have a lot of food here. We have drink, relax, enjoy yourselves. If folks want to come for pictures, let us know. I'm so happy you're all here today, and it's a wonderful event. I'm going to turn it back over to Doug. Got a couple of remarks.
We have started a tradition here in the last few years of ending all our meetings with singing God Bless America. So Ron Kirk is going to come to lead us in God Bless America. And I hope you're saying that as a prayer.
If you believe in prayer, pray that God will give us leaders that believe what we have heard tonight. Join with me in God Bless America. God bless America, land that I love. Stand beside her and guide her through the night with the light from above. From the mountains to the prairies, through the oceans white with foam. God bless America, my home sweet home. God bless America, my home sweet